Thank you very much for making that space for me to come in so easily, and welcome you all to Cardiff today. My name is Peter Ryland. I'm a director in the economy department in the Welsh Government, and I'm also technically still the chief executive of the Welsh European Funding Office, which many of you will know, and I'd like to think love. But it means that I have, of course, had a very long period of engagement with the Irish Sea and many of you here today, and it is wonderful to see so many friends around the organisation that we have built up since Brexit to build on the foundations that we set up over those years and look forward and build something new and maybe even better. So, welcome to all of you. Welcome to Cardiff. Croeso cynnes I chi gyd yng Nghymru. Very, very good to have you here from all corners of the Irish Sea, from Scotland, Ireland, Brittany, I understand, and slightly bizarrely perhaps Kent, which most people wouldn't put on the Irish Sea, but Kent has a long history of collaboration across borders, and we're very pleased to have you with us today. I've got a few sort of housekeeping things. I'll do the small print first. No fire drill, so if the alarm goes off, delegates should make their way to the main entrance, so straight up there, and follow directions from hotel staff. And the toilets are outside this room and to the right. So that's all of that, very easily. So yeah, as I say, this builds on a long story that we've been working together on for a very long time. The work that we're still doing, in spite of all of the tensions and divisions, and we hear a lot about that, don't we? A lot of difficulty in the world, and you know, it's real. It's not just media invention, but it's great to reflect and celebrate actually on all of the good things that are happening quietly in the background, to build relations, to maintain relations, and to expand them. So we're very grateful to all of you, actually, in Wales. It's been a very difficult period, and the understanding of all of our partners all around the Irish Sea on some of the context for all of that, the tolerance of it, the sheer persistence has been remarkable, and we're very grateful for all of that. And to the Peace Plus programme in particular, to celebrate that today as a platform for giving substance, if you like, to the goodwill that is out there, and it is out there, and you know, just to reflect, for instance, on the renewed agreement signed between Simon Harris and Elaine Ed Morgan just recently, confirming that long commitment for cross-border collaboration and building those relations. We've got to do something about it, and you guys are the doing. So I'm hugely grateful for all of that. So I think I've said everything I needed to say there, and without further ado, I will invite Rebecca Evans to take the stage, our Cabinet Secretary for the Economy, Energy and Planning in the Welsh Government. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Bore everyone, good morning. It is a real pleasure to be able to join you today at the second Developing Irish Sea Cooperation Symposium, and an especially warm welcome for all of you who've travelled to join us in Wales today. The Irish Sea region, which includes the Celtic Sea and the North Channel, is a highway that brings us together. It's not something that keeps us apart. You'll hear today that our businesses, institutions and our communities are already working closely together to deliver solutions to shared challenges across this unique maritime territory. And importantly, they are accessing greater economic opportunities. And I think that that's something that we all want to see more of. So we are neighbours, and Brexit and the geopolitical challenges has changed nothing about that. We have historical, cultural and trade bonds which go back many centuries. If we want to innovate, if we want to sustain our maritime ecosystem, if we want to promote culture and tourism in our coastal communities, or just do business, then we have to collaborate. The Irish Sea region is an economic area, it's a functional area, and it just makes sense. Wales's relationship with Ireland remains a key priority for us, and as we've heard, Lynette Morgan and Simon Harris launched the new Ireland-Wales Shared Statement 2030 just in July of this year. And I'm really delighted that Jack Chambers TD, Minister for Public Expenditure, Infrastructure, Public Service Reform and Digitalisation, I thought I had a big job, but he will be giving us a video address later on today. And I'm sure that he'll be reflecting on the many shared priorities which our two nations will continue to cooperate on. I'm also really delighted that the Developing Irish Sea Cooperation Project, or DISC, is a broader partnership between Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland. And DISC is a project within the Peace Plus programme, and it is a particular pleasure for us to see Wales still engaged in the EU cross-border programmes. DISC is a great step towards bringing governments together to identify the best strategy and actions for increasing cooperation in the Irish Sea region. And I know that we will all agree on how important it is that governments show leadership in this way. And that's something that the Welsh Government has been doing with the Irish Sea Framework for a number of years. But the Irish Sea region is complex, and this will need a team effort from all of us. So today is a chance for you to influence the strategy and action plan that DISC will develop and to identify what contribution you will make. This event and the people in this room also demonstrate that the Irish Sea region includes all regions and nations around this geographical, economic and cultural territory. The Irish Sea Framework recognises the role of the English regions and the Isle of Man, and that focus should be on generating economic and social benefits for the Irish Sea region, not dividing lines geographic or otherwise. The Irish Sea Framework has helped provide continuity for the important networks and the relationships which were formed through the Interreg programmes. The absence of a formal EU framework for continuing cooperation in the Irish Sea has been a challenge. But the foresight of Peace Plus in supporting the DISC project is really to be commended. It's given a great opportunity to explore what a framework for the Irish Sea region might look like. So if the Irish Sea region is an economic area, a functional area, then we need to actively consider how to bring EU and non-EU regions together around our shared priorities. But a framework in itself won't deliver impact on its own. There's a recognised need for funding to be aligned to any framework. The Welsh Government's Agile programme has played a really key role in maintaining and developing new partnerships in the Irish Sea region in recent years. And you'll see in the showcase and you'll hear in the workshops today from partnerships and collaborations that have been supported by Agile Cymru. If every nation and region is serious about cooperation in the Irish Sea region, then we need to explore ways of continuing this capacity and the momentum that's already been generated. So small amounts of funding can make a difference. Since April 2021, the Agile Cymru programme has supported over 1,000 UK and international engagements and has helped to generate over £15 million in funding and investment. We've also welcomed the alignment of the Irish Government funding, for example, for the Research Alliance Fund, and also the recent scheme to support early career researchers. Our joint funding initiative with Brittany demonstrates that existing mechanisms can be aligned to support shared priorities such as marine energy and language. We also need to be ambitious and to find new ways to scale up the existing activity. The Irish Sea region has the potential to justify significant investment from public and private sources, and we can do more together to access competitive funding from the UKRI and from Horizon Europe. A framework that brings together the UK and Ireland, EU and non-EU regions will be a unique opportunity for future collaborations. The discussions today will give you an opportunity to explore these points in more detail, and the DISC project is listening. So we will always be neighbours, we will always be friends. We will always be business partners to the benefit of all of us. And we have shared values. The Irish Sea region is a shared asset, it's a shared responsibility, and it's a shared opportunity. and we are stronger together. So thank you very much for listening, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Confirmation, if it were needed, of the commitment from the very top of the organisation to the ongoing work to build our future. I'm tempted, Cabinet Secretary, to since you've done the heavy lifting on Jack Chambers' job title, to skip over it again, but it would be discourteous perhaps to do so. We can't be with us today, but we do have a video message from Jack Chambers, the Minister for Public Expenditure, Infrastructure, Public Service Reform and Digitalisation, which is more of a job description than a job title, but there we are. So can we run the video for that, please?
Diagwit from Ireland, Borda, Madeleine Va, hello. It's a real pleasure to speak to you all today, even if only virtually as part of this really important symposium, to explore opportunities for cross-border cooperation between Ireland, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. We welcome initiatives such as the Peace Plus funded Developing Irish Sea Cooperation Project, which we hope can support wider collaboration around the Irish Sea. I want to thank the project partners and in particular the Welsh Government for what promises to be a really fantastic event. The links between our jurisdictions range from the ancient, stretching back long before St. Patrick and St. Columba, right up to the cutting edge of modernity. It's a relationship that has grown from our shared history and heritage and is rooted in the bonds between families, friends and so many communities. We're also bound to our education and research networks, our arts and culture. We have deep economic ties with strong levels of exports, investments and tourism. These bonds have grown ever closer through 30 years of EU-supported territorial cooperation. It's important that we recognise the significant achievements made through the Ireland, Wales and Interreg A programmes, which have fostered economic, social and territorial cooperation and addressed border-related challenges between jurisdictions. I confirm with you today that the Irish Government is more committed than ever to deepening cross-border cooperation for the mutual benefit of all our people. The Irish and Welsh Governments recently renewed the shared statement and the joint action plan to 2030. In the coming weeks, the Irish and Scottish Governments will meet to renew the bilateral review of 2030. Both frameworks consolidate existing ties and make new commitments to cooperation. Through the Shared Island Fund, we're implementing the largest ever programme of supports for North-South engagement, research and infrastructure development. Initially set out to 2025 with €500 million, we are now investing and committing to over €1 billion to 2030 and a further €1 billion to 2035. The recently agreed UK and Ireland Joint Statement 2030 represents the starting point for a strengthened relationship, making new commitments to the benefit of current and future generations living across these islands, fostering and supporting new and existing connections across the Irish Sea. These agreements and others provide dynamic frameworks for cooperation between all of us, recognising we can achieve so much more together than we can ever do alone. The Government and I are really ambitious for what we can achieve together and how our relationships will evolve across the years ahead. Today's symposium and its discussions, the focus and how to support cooperation between our governments and partners and increase collaboration across the business, education, research, arts, community and sporting sectors. The conversations held today will hopefully inform and indeed inspire in equal measure the cooperation and collaboration so intrinsic to how we do business. I know that there are officials from the Irish Government, Cardiff office in attendance today, so please do reach out to them as well. Thank you very much. I wish everyone a really successful event. Geraint Green.
Striking, there's not actually a huge amount of collaboration in writing these speeches, honest. So, but it's very interesting to see that both of our ministers have picked up on the same topics, and in particular, the different dimensions to what we're working with here. The historical dimension, the cultural dimension, the geographical dimension. It's huge, actually, but it just shows what a a web, a fabric of different aspects there are to these relations. Not least, of course, the economic and the reality and the hard-nosed here and now. What are we actually going to do to make life better for all of our citizens all around the Irish Sea? David Kelly actually sort of put his finger on what this is all about earlier on when we were having coffee. In understatement of the day, he said, it takes work. And that's what's going to happen now, I'm afraid. This is where we move on a little bit from the opening statements, the affirmation of the collective intention to build on all of those historical and geographic and existing ties and take this forward into something which gives us all a much brighter future. So, Geraint, I think this is where you take over, isn't it? Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Geraint Green. Geraint has been involved in European programmes for longer than I can remember, and leads the work on Agile, and Geraint and his team have been the driving energy behind today's event. So it's the one thing I haven't done yet so far is to say the thank yous, which I will do now. But Geraint and all of his team, these things don't happen. This takes work as well. So thank you to all of you for that. And Geraint, over to you.
Thank you very much for coming. It does take work. It's taken work to get us here, but I'm really pleased with the turnout and the familiar faces and new faces that we got here. So, if the panel members want to come up, so we'll apologies in advance. I got no idea how long this is going to take. But I'll try and make my way through this. I think we've got some really good panelists that have plenty of experience, plenty of knowledge. And we'll do a structured element initially. Please sit down here. And then I am mic'd by the sound of it, so that's good. I'll stop swearing at this point. We're doing a structured element, and then we'll definitely open it up to the floor. I will look at my clock because I am renowned for running over. So, but we do have plenty of time for this. If we do finish early for any reason, then it's more networking, so that's great, and I'll talk about that later. So, probably haven't, have we sat in the right order? We probably haven't, it doesn't really matter anyway, but Irene knows that I'm coming to her. So, just from my own point, sorry, banging mics, my own point of view, as Peter's already said, I'm the head of Agile Cymru, so we are a partner in the DISC project, and also, as has been touched on, we've supported a lot of international and cross-border cooperation, both with our seed funding, but also through the hard work of engaging and encouraging over the years. So this does feel like an important moment, I think, in that work. So that's why I'm chairing this, I suppose, but also the really important thing is to hear from these people because they know more than me. I'll turn to Irene first. So Dr. Irene McMaster from Strathclyde University. And I think the theme of what we'll chat about is the best practice in cross-border and international cooperation, and Irene, I'm sure, will explain why she's very well placed to do that. So can you say a little bit about yourself and your interest in cooperation in the Irish Sea region?
Yep, hi, as you've heard, Irene McMaster. I'm based at the Strathclyde University in a research centre called the European Policies Research Centre. And we do research on regional economic development and have been doing that since the 70s, not me personally, because I'm not quite that old, but I've been there for 25 years, so I'm still relatively old. But a large part of what we do, what I specifically do in the centre, is work on territorial cooperation. A large part of that has been focused, obviously, on EU territorial cooperation, funding, Interreg, but also now the huge plethora of other types of cooperation, the mechanisms and instruments that are in place to support breaking down sort of barriers to working across borders. And also looking at different scales. There's sort of direct cross-border stuff, but also transnational and much wider transboundary cooperation. But we also sort of look beyond that and have worked with the OECD on sort of different forms of cooperation, looked particularly sort of Nordic, Scandinavian, Arctic cooperation, so it's not always just a EU programme lens, which is helpful given the current context here and being based in a UK-based university. In terms of my interest in Irish Sea cooperation in particular, going way back, it always seemed a bit of a sort of missing link. There's Atlantic Sea Basin cooperation, there's North Sea based cooperation, there's Mediterranean, and Irish Sea it had the really valuable cross-border programme between Ireland and Wales, as we've heard, but that sort of joining dots was kind of missing a little bit in the Irish Sea area. As a geographer, I look at a map and you see the logic of it jumping out at you, that there's this sort of rim round about of territories which all share common interests and experiences. And having been really heavily involved in looking at Interreg programs in the past and then seeing what happened post-Brexit and even in the lead up to Brexit, it was such a huge relief to be able to work with Welsh Government on a kind of explorative piece of work about maybe, given the complex circumstances that we were in, what could still be doable, and sort of live with the realities of the situation and sort of begin to take positive steps rather than fold your arms and go in the huff and say it's broken. So taking on that piece of work was really interesting, and it's been fantastic to actually see events and things happening as a result of it. So yes, that's my background and where the angles I'm coming to it from.
No, I completely agree that that sort of gap in the map it's so obvious, isn't it? And Cabinet Secretary highlighted that as well. So I think another thing that came through on both ministerial addresses was sort of references to frameworks about having some kind of framework for cooperation. So given your best practice experience, I mean, any advice for people in this room and for the DISC project in terms of the model or models, because it's not necessarily one model that we should be considering for doing something like that?
Yep, as I said, we do quite a broad range of work, and actually part of the work we did sort of leading up to the sort of Irish Sea cooperation framework was to look at what else is out there, and one of the things that stood out is the range and variety in sort of structures and formats and things like that. And a framework doesn't need to be really rigid and structured, and if you're not doing X, Y, and Z, then it's not a proper framework. A lot of them are really flexible, they've evolved over time, they've expanded, they've contracted, they've become more ambitious, they've dialed it back. So committing to sort of be part of a framework doesn't have to be jump in with both feet and have this very rigid burden applied to you or anything like that. But equally, having anchor points and sort of touchstones is key to sort of keeping momentum going and pushing things forward, and particularly having that sort of shared understanding of what you're doing and why is important. And again, as we've heard, the Irish Sea sort of area has so much in common that bit pretty much writes itself. And already there's been these sort of key areas of interest that have been highlighted where there's a body of work already underway, but equally has the potential to get developed further. Getting enthusiasts in the room is also a key thing. I mean, so often you hear, oh, a lot of it's quite personality driven, and that is absolutely the case. It takes people who are committed to push it forward to go for it. But I was reading an OECD report on this just recently, because they're sort of looking at the importance of particularly cross-border cooperation frameworks given all the pace of change and everything. And they were sort of recommending having not just a Batman or Bat-person situation, but a Robin that comes along to, it's key for organisations to, yes, have that committed person, but make sure that knowledge and experience and enthusiasm is captured and disseminated within the organisation, or is in a position to be able to be explained quickly to a successor, be that a politician or within an agency or organisation. And they were recommending sort of coming up with sort of easy handouts that can be shared. And so that was a key part of it. And having some tools that you can use. I mean, in an ideal world, lots of funding is obviously the key tool. But a lot of these cooperation frameworks, it's about alliance building, it's about leveraging and connecting other resources, and that's something that already we've kind of heard a bit about in the presentations from the ministers, and the work of the Welsh Government's already highlighted. There's potential just in the networks and making the connections to again, work with what you've got and not always be held back by what you haven't got. So yes, in terms of frameworks, I think the flexibility is important as well, but it's good to have a plan.
Yeah, it's good to have a plan, and it's also good, as you touched on, it's almost that sort of, I can't remember the phrase, but workforce planning, isn't it? The fact that you can't rely on the individuals, that they may move on, and we've all experienced that, where perhaps something that was going well, it sort of stops when that person moves on. So it's spreading the capacity perhaps across the Irish Sea region. I got this idea around. Sorry, it's not about me, is it? But I've got this idea around a relay race that sometimes if you've held the baton for a while, you need to hand that over while you have a little rest. So that's something I think for us to think about. So what is your recommendation? And we may come back to this at the end as well, but because I might ask everyone for a top three, but if we got time. But what is the next step we should take? This is about the next practical step, as we've already touched on in this session. So it's a difficult question, but if you said, okay, you should do this now. I know you wrote us a report on this, by the way.
Yeah. If I could just refer you to my previous work. Well, I think for starters, it's important just to highlight how important it is that this is still going. So keeping going is actually pretty, it's an achievement in itself. And the fact that through this process, the capacity, the knowledge, the institutional memory about territorial cooperation and what it can do in the future is important. And so I think there's always something else to do, but it's quite important to recognise the value of what's being done at the moment. And in the current context, it's an achievement to get people in the room together and get a travel budget to come and that sort of thing. So there's that. I looked at a number of other sort of examples which are kind of similar scale in terms of what they're trying to do, and they have, for example, sort of there's one called the Nora Cooperation, which is between west coast of Norway, Iceland, Faroe Islands and Greenland, and that's funded through the Nordic Council. And it's very similar to this. Part of their role is alliance building. It's not always just going and justifying their own activities and doing their thing. They sort of build networks with different organisations, forms of funding, that sort of thing, and it fits a bit with, again, what was said earlier about future links to Horizon and that sort of thing. And they have sort of working groups on specific themes, and again, very territorially, regionally relevant themes. It's great to have the sort of national level involved because you need that push and backing, but getting it down to a kind of regional level really helps, and they've been able to sort of take action on very specific things like how to manage large cruise ships coming into small villages and things like that. So it gives them kind of quite a practical focus, and also just going through a process of, and I know the DISC project is kind of linking to this, where you're keeping track of what you're doing and recording it is important as well, because sometimes in that push to go forward, you kind of can sometimes lose track of what you've achieved and what the results are of what you've been achieving. So yeah, you don't want to come up too long a list, but
just the next one.
Yeah. But under the 3 themes that are there, and based on discussions like today, being able to come up with sort of identifiable areas maybe where there are small projects and things that could be kind of pushed forward as well, is you can see the potential building for all of that. And even discussions earlier today, you heard about some things that are actually already happening.
And I think that will come through in the workshops as well, and also in the showcases. So yeah, it's an important point there about finding where there's already that capacity where you can build in it. And I know my team will know that I talk about the impact side of things, because I think we're all probably cooperation friends here, aren't we? And the risk with that is that it's seen as a talking shop. It's seen as, you just getting in a room and talking about what you'd like to do, rather than actually doing things. I don't think that's me.
That's an Irish call coming through.
If that's a celebratory agreement or not, I don't know. Heckling. Impact, demonstrating the impact, not finding yourself 2 years into doing something and realising you haven't been collecting the information. And for those funded, that's can be a pain, but it justifies the investment, and it makes the business cases, etc. Great, thank you for that. So we'll move on at that point, and you mentioned Horizon, which was almost like we planned this, which we didn't. So I'll move to Kevin next. So Kevin Burke, National Director for Horizon Europe from Enterprise Ireland. You've got a longer title than that, but I thought I'd cut it a little bit. And again, what we'll do here is explore the theme of how we can maximise the opportunities in Horizon Europe specifically. So again, the same opening question, really. Say a little bit about yourself and your interest in cooperation in the Irish Sea region.
Okay, thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Kevin Burke. I'm National Director for Horizon Europe at Enterprise Ireland. Enterprise Ireland is the Irish government's indigenous the government's indigenous economic development agency. Enterprise Ireland is very embedded in the research and innovation system at multiple different levels. We fund 9 large technology centres in the Irish ecosystem, 17 technology gateways. We have a number of different national collaborative funding offers and so on. And one of our remits within that wider ecosystem is that we are the lead agency for the Horizon Europe National Support Network in Ireland. So if I look at the NSN, as I'm going to call it, there's close to 30 people in that national team, probably up to around 22 national contact points, and also some delegates as well. 15 of those are full-time NCPs based in Enterprise Ireland. We're particularly focused on Pillar 2, the global challenges part, where you see the large collaborative research projects. We're also very active in Pillar 3, particularly on the European Innovation Council programme, and in particular the Accelerator programme part of that. So we're the anchor agency, if you like, within the Horizon Europe system in Ireland, and then the national team comprises a number of additional NCPs and national delegates who are hosted in a number of other government departments and government agencies, including, the Marine Institute, Environmental Protection Agency, Sustainable Energy Association of Ireland, and so on. So it's a kind of a matrix structure, and the Irish government has set a national target for Ireland for the Horizon Europe programme. So we've been given a national drawdown target of 1.5 billion from the programme. Currently, we're tracking reasonably well against that target. We are officially over 1 billion on the dashboard at the moment, with another 100 million in process. So we're officially, I guess, at 1.1 billion. And there are a number of things that we prioritise in terms of how we go about our work in the system in Ireland. But I will say that there is a lot of north-south collaboration, and increasingly we're getting into the east-west dimension of that and the Irish Sea collaboration part of it. So our discussions, north-south collaboration, are now morphing into how do we do more? How do we bring the Irish Sea into that and get greater collaboration across that area? And as far as our NCP network goes, our NCPs were delighted when the UK came back into Horizon Europe and associated in January 2024. We had seen slippage in terms of our collaboration links with the UK, going from being our #1 top collaborator in FP7 to 5th by the end of Horizon 2020 to 8th for a good part of the beginning of Horizon Europe. And now we're back now it's going up, and it's now 7th. And my information talking to the NCPs is that we are now beginning to see all of those networks, collaborations, they're beginning to regenerate after a period of time. And we're seeing a bounce back in terms of the level of activity north, south, east, west. And we're particularly glad that the UK is back in. They were always and have been a great ally for us in our discussions with the Commission, certainly around the importance of universities in the national systems of innovation, and how we drive impact and economic value through applied research and so on. So on our side, I think why this is important today and over the next 18 months plus, I think what we want to do is leverage the existing networks, the existing frameworks that are there, and use that as a platform or additional funding that's being provided to stimulate alliances and alliance formation to bring that into the Horizon Europe domain and platform. And our NCPs in Ireland are very keen to further extend, develop the links and the advice we give to companies and higher education institutes across and along the Irish Sea, so that we can drive more collaboration there. So we're very much interested in trying to do more. We think there's a lot more opportunity to do more now that those relationships, those networks are beginning to regenerate. And I can see from just going through the dashboard myself in advance of today, universities from across the Irish Sea, you're collaborating with UCD, Trinity, Royal College of Surgeons, University of Galway, and so on. There's some very strong links in life sciences in particular, and also in the marine. And the marine, I think, is a particular area where there's a lot of future opportunities for collaboration within Horizon Europe. And I have a list of them here: fisheries and aquaculture, science, data and evidence underpinning renewable energy, marine spatial planning, marine socioeconomics research, green smart ports, the greening of the Irish Sea area, and so on. So there's a lot of, I think, room for a lot more collaboration, and our NCPs are very much interested in helping in a practical way, in whatever way we can to make that happen.
No, that's great, and that's already a win for us, I think, in terms of being able to tap into your experience, and I agree. I think we've seen the same with our much smaller team, and there's been a huge uplift in the interest in the Horizon Europe seed funding that we operate in the last few years, really reflecting that change in momentum. And again, I know that UK-Ireland relationship is important, and I think for the people in this room, it's important that we influence how that relationship goes. It'll happen at the UK and Ireland level, but I think as everybody has said so far, the logic of the Irish Sea region as something to cooperate on should be applied to that UK-Ireland relationship rather than becoming too well, bilateral is the right word, but
it taps into smart specialisation, place-based innovation, and obviously there's a whole bunch of other cultural things, even including in Horizon around linguistics, protection and growth of languages, and so on, cultural heritage, renewable tourism, and there's a lot of opportunities in other parts of Horizon in Cluster 2 and so on that I think would also be very interesting in parallel to renewable energy and all that kind of stuff. You've also got marine heritage and that side of it as well. So Enterprise Ireland, we provide financial supports to researchers to travel, to meet potential project partners. We give ERC grants to prospective ERC applicants, and we also give financial support to Irish applicants who are looking to coordinate a project. And those coordinator projects in particular are useful insofar as they're coming to us seeking support well before the consortium has been fully formed. So we can see that they're looking for different types of project partners. They might have one or two lined up, and they're going about. And so I think that's an intervention opportunity for us in terms of the Irish Sea element, making sure that they're looking and that we're networking correctly and tapping into the NCP networks correctly to identify potential consortium partners from Irish Sea region and so on, because we're seeing those projects quite early. Some of them could be 12 to 9 months in advance, so there's plenty of time, to try and establish other consortia partners that make sense.
That sort of stepping stone, gateway. There's various phrases, but I think that's a role that the Irish Sea region can do if we're working together. And
can I just make one more point?
I was going to ask you. You've kind of covered my second question. So,
but as an economic development agency, clearly, one of the things we're also interested in is how do we bring enterprise into Horizon Europe, and we have a number of strategies on that side. One, we try to work with potential coordinators from Ireland to identify the kind of enterprises they need in their projects, and then we're liaising closely within Enterprise Ireland with our sector teams to identify companies that match up with the kind of companies that are needed. So we're trying that, and that's important. But also, we're on coordinators, we're also trying to get them to work with our tech centres and our gateways. So all of those research centres have large industry membership. And so what we want them to do is we want them to be applying as centres themselves to Horizon Europe, but we want them bringing industry with them. And when they do that, there's lots of other additional consortium opportunities. So IMR would be one of our largest technology centres, Irish Manufacturing Research. It's focused on advanced manufacturing, digitalisation of manufacturing, sustainability of, and so currently they're applying for about 13 different calls at the moment, and they're bringing 11 or 12 companies from their industry membership with them. So in Enterprise Ireland, we can tap into those centres and their industry membership. So that's also another pool of way of complementing projects within the RC in terms of if we're looking for industry partners or we're looking for consortium that are still in formation.
Other people in other regions around there may have the perfect partner.
Yeah.
It's just perhaps those conversations aren't there because they're based on historic networks. It's about refreshing but also broadening those networks now. And we'll touch in a while on the industry point of view, and reflect that Horizon isn't the end game for everybody. Correct. But actually building towards something like Horizon is really good practice and can lead to a number of opportunities. Yeah. Collaboration is going to help you whatever happens. But we've found that our engagement with industry, which we'd like to do more of, and I think there'll definitely be some conversations between my team and your team in terms of how we make those connections. But it sometimes, if you're the right person, you really do fit that consortium. It is quite easy to be part of Horizon. It's competitive, etc. But if you're offering something relatively unique, and it's just the awareness, raising the exposure to these broader networks. If we, my second question, you covered to some extent, but I mean, it's one of the longest ones. So okay. I mean, again, it's just diving into this is the one around the sort of the mechanisms really, and again, you've already covered that to some extent, and recognizing that I mean, I've been involved in cooperation and conversations and some of the work we do, and there is still that tendency maybe for people to start to drift towards the easy option. Correct. Where you're talking to a group of EU regions and non-EU regions, and obviously there's less of the non-EU, and the conversation tends to drift into the familiar territory of, we could do Horizon and get together in that, or we could do Erasmus and get together in that. So I think the Irish Sea region, it's an opportunity to demonstrate, and there are others interested in this concept. We have a colleague here from Brittany, but we know that people are interested in a broader Atlantic and transatlantic context to this. And that's all about EU regions and non-EU regions. So it's the mechanisms that would work for, obviously we're interested in the ones that would work just as well for non-EU regions as they do for EU regions, because sometimes the conversation drifts into things that are available that realistically are not available to non-EU regions. Now, you've covered that to some extent in what you said, but anything more on the specific mechanisms?
Well, I mean, so the vanilla thing is that, work programs are negotiated, work programs are drafted, they go through iterations, then they're published, then there's an info day, there's usually a parallel brokerage event and so on. So that's the kind of route 101. Sometimes if you're relying on B2B brokerage events around info open days organized by the Commission, sometimes that's almost too late, sometimes. Some of these consortia are already formed, and I think what we want to do is try and in some way get ahead of some of those standard approaches to develop a little bit more matching so that these things are forming ahead of schedule almost and getting ready to go into and seeking opportunities. I really like, there's a university in Norway, NNTU, and I really like the way that they have done a whole of HEI mapping exercise, and they've converted their capabilities and so on into different brochures relevant to different clusters and different calls. And they publish these brochures every year, and they're very accessible, and you really get to understand the strengths of that university in terms of partnering and so on. And actually, I haven't seen any of the Irish universities adopt that approach yet, but we're trying to get them to make their skills, capability, priorities more accessible to other potential partners and so on. But we also have to use the existing networks that are already there. There's EEN, there's Eureka, there's a number of existing platforms. Even Peace Plus has a number of marine-related projects. Yes. We've got the research alliances, which have been mentioned, which are kind of a pump priming of collaboration, Ireland and Wales and so on, to get people collaborating together and then stepping into Horizon. I think the NCPs are probably a good source of how do we work them a bit better in terms of the NCPs in our national support network. Some of them are very experienced. They've been around for 15, 20 years, some of them, so they've deep domain knowledge, etc. Once we set them, look, we'd like to get more collaboration in X or Y. They're able to really go about it then. They have all of the networks to make that work. And also, I meant to compliment your own calendar.
Yeah, well then, I was going to do a huge plug.
Because actually, I had been looking for a calendar of calls, and I was really surprised the Commission had never collated or printed one. And I found one in Wales, and actually it's been really useful. And so it's slightly viral in our team, that calendar.
It was surprising how that was picked up by a range of people. you thought would know better, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So you're doing the job of the commission with probably a much smaller team, I suspect.
Where's Peter? There we go. I'm doing the job of the commission.
So it was extremely useful, especially as an NCP coordinator, where you're trying to track the flotsam and jetsam of, a lot of calls. But all I can say is that on practical stuff, I mean, we meet North-South regularly. We have a Horizon Europe All-Ireland committee. I think what we could look to do is extend that into an Irish Sea committee, so that when we are meeting North-South, that we're bringing in the Irish Sea dimension into that, because then you've got coordinators from a number of different areas, and depending on what we're prioritising, we might have the health NCPs with us for that meeting, and then we're planning webinars, we're planning in-person brokerage events, but that they're slightly more, let's say, smaller, curated, kind of events, rather than the big info day that the commission might organise.
That's a real practical, the third question is a practical step, but that sounds excellent, because I think that idea, and I think the challenge to the people in the room is, you can hear that there's people who are already converted to the idea of us working as a region, as an Irish Sea region, working together. But there'll be people who won't be cited on that necessarily, and the value of it. I tend to use the phrase brand, and I mean it, but just the awareness of that there's value in working away in this area. I think that's something that I think it's something that'll come through the findings of this. But that's a tangible example of where, in a sense, if we'd emailed you and said, can your NCPs advise some Welsh organisation, without the context of understanding the Irish Sea region and why we might want to do that, that might be quite a short conversation. But I think what you're alluding to there is that we're all seeing the value in pulling people together. The UK NCPs can be brought into that, because I'm thinking from a Wales point of view here, but it'll apply to other regions. They're there to support us, and we have good relationships with them. And if they understand that this is UK and Ireland working together, this is the Irish Sea region thing, which seems to be going somewhere, I think those tangible examples could start to emerge of working.
I mean, the other thing worth mentioning, so Ireland will be holding the presidency of the Council in the second half of 2026. There's a number of research and innovation events planned. There will be a very large one on bioeconomy. There will be another one on One Health. The Marie Curie annual conference will be in Ireland. The ERC are going to organise something big. We had Maria Lepton visit Ireland earlier this year, the president of the ERC, and she's been re-elected. We have a big event on regional innovation, and we have one on valorisation or deep tech commercialisation and startup and scale-up type stuff. So and I probably haven't remembered all of them there. But if we're organising these events and people are travelling to these events, then we really want to make the most of that and try to be maybe organising some satellite meetings or networking events either before or the day after or whatever. And I think we could be able to do that in an Irish Sea collaboration context. If people are coming over, then we can organise, if you like, our fringe events that would be very specifically to get that, to get that intensity of collaboration and alliances going.
I think that's the important thing, isn't it? Rather than just attendance.
And then stepping into Horizon and other parts. And I think also, Ireland is involved in a number of co-funded partnerships. So there's a range of partnerships, and there's a variety of partnerships in Horizon Europe. There was 120 in Horizon 2020. The Commission promised to rationalise them. So there was 49, and now there's, I think 50 plus partnerships. But some of them are co-funded, so they're almost like national calls. And if Ireland is funding researchers to go into these calls, those then are actually quite nice projects for bilateral type stuff or Irish Sea type collaboration, because it's national funding going in, and then you have a certain degree of control over who's going in. And so Research Ireland would be involved in that, the Marine Institute, the SEAI, Research Ireland. So there's a lot of activity in Ireland putting national co-funding into co-funded partnerships. And those are industry kind of focused, industry value chain,
Yeah.
but they're on very big, important topic areas.
And I think that focus is really important because co-fund involves
Yeah.
match funding. That instantly is potentially a barrier. But
Yeah.
but I think, if there's strategic opportunities, strategic funds coming forward, in
Yeah.
our regions, then letting them know that with a small amount of co-funding,
Yeah.
we could be tapping into those
Yeah.
opportunities, drawing on your expertise. I think that's
Yeah.
something that's really important.
And Research Ireland will have a number of new research centres coming on stream. They're quite advanced through their research centre evaluation process. So there will be some new, probably very large research centres popping up now in Ireland. Some of them are existing that have been amalgamated, and some of them will be brand new. And all of those centres have KPI and metrics around international collaboration, Horizon Europe collaboration, EIC collaboration, and so on. So all of those centres are metriced around the internationalisation of what they're doing, as well as delivering on kind of national mandates.
Great, thank you. So we'll draw it there, but I know you're going to be inundated with people coming up.
Well, I'm around for
queuing
most of the day,
later on,
so I'm not running away, so I'm here.
And it's fantastic you came over as well. So, well, it's great. Everybody's in this room has come, to be honest. But so I'll turn out to Madeleine, and I think this is useful because I think this is work. This is how I had it in my head, because again, although there's clearly some tangible things we could be doing in the Horizon Europe step. I'm saying step because that's what I'm going to say next. It's a recognition that sometimes it's not necessarily about Horizon Europe. That could be something that emerges, but actually it's just, as the Cabinet Secretary said, highlighted, it's just about doing business. So I think you might have something to say on that. So we'll talk about how industry is already collaborating around the Irish Sea region, and obviously I'm sure you'll touch on where you'd like to go in terms of a next step as well. So again, can you say a little bit about yourself and your interest in cooperation in the Irish Sea region?
Morning everybody, as Geraint said, I'm Madeleine and I work for an organisation called, called Aerospace Wales. So we're the trade association for all aerospace companies in Wales, which might sound quite niche when I'm sat here talking to all of you, but Geraint and I worked on a project, and hearing some of the things that the other panellists have said already, it all just links in so nicely. So I guess our remit really is just to support and grow the companies that we have here in Wales, and we understand that we can't do that on our own. My background is even more niche. It's in maintenance, repair and overhaul of aircraft. So when I'm talking about it to my son, it's like the MOT of aircraft, essentially. But it's a little bit more than that, because in my industry, we don't really like to talk about things that go wrong, but they do. Bird strikes, lightning strikes, hailstorm damage to aircraft. And one thing that a lot of people don't know is that in Wales we have some incredible companies that are working to make sure that damaged aircraft are turned around quickly, and older aircraft, which are flying, because I think it's understood that we have big supply chain issues in our sector. It's 8 years now if you place a purchase order with Airbus until you get a new aircraft, and this year we hit 16,000 aircraft in backlog. So aircraft are older and they're still flying, and we need to make sure that they're flying safely, most importantly, but as sustainably as possible as well. A lot of the work that we've done with Ireland is because Ireland is a centre of excellence for aerospace. In Wales, it contributes about 1.6 billion to the economy, and I hope I've got this right, but it's over 4 billion euros in Ireland. And so we thought, if we're supporting our businesses here, where can we look to help them and to grow? And it made sense that was going to be with Ireland. So, how can companies work better together? And we did a project with Geraint. So that's why I'm here, and that's where my interest comes from.
Great, thank you. Those are some significant numbers, aren't they? Again, you can touch on the project in the answer to this, but again, in your opinion, what structures or support are important to ensure that industry increases its cooperation in the Irish Sea region? I mean, essentially, this is feeding into a strategy and action plan, and I think we're all keen on the action bit of that. And this is the chance. We don't have all the answers, but this is the chance to reflect that industry view in terms of those support and structures that would really help you move on from where you already are.
Yeah, so Rebecca mentioned earlier the Agile funding, and we applied for some of that funding for a project that we undertook in February this year. But I think just to give some context, I'll go back to one of the other strategic working groups that my organisation put together. So during COVID, our organisations were really worried about what was going to happen, and we decided that we knew that lots of our organisations in Wales could do a piece of the puzzle. So they could do a part of the MRO process, but not all of it. And we thought, how can we put a group together to try and attack some of those much larger contracts? It was difficult because a lot of these companies are competitors in some elements, and it's taken a long time. But we're 5 years down the line, the 12 organisations are still working together, and they've managed to secure contracts of over £1.5 million together in places like France and Spain, in places that they hadn't previously been working as well. So this year we thought, what can we do? How do we scale this? What is the next logical step? And that's where Geraint and his team came in, because we thought, it makes sense for us to look over the sea. We know Ireland are world leaders in MRO, and we know that MRO capacity, because of a lot of the supply chain issues that I mentioned earlier, is at an all-time high. And so we applied for a small amount of funding, which meant that we could take some of our MRO businesses over to Ireland, and then we brought some of the Irish organisations back to Wales. So we went to see what the companies were doing, but we used it as an opportunity to start to build those relationships and build friendships in some parts, but an understanding, to get a fundamental understanding of what we have and what we can do, and vice versa. So the event took place in February, as I mentioned. We went to Ireland, we took 7 companies, Enterprise Ireland, one of your sector leads, supported as well as Welsh Government. And then back in Wales, we had 5 or 6 Irish companies. We went and did some tours of some of the brilliant facilities that we have here. And those conversations have been ongoing. The meetings are still taking place. We've met at other international exhibitions. And there are some conversations still taking place about actual projects that can be worked on, over £250,000. So we're absolutely delighted with how that worked. I think that was everything that I was going to say.
Yeah,
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, no, and again, it's I mean, you've heard some of the structures and the link with Enterprise Island's already there. So that's something that could perhaps be developed under some of the structures that Kevin was talking about. So yeah, it's. So you've highlighted. I mean, thank you very much for highlighting Agile Cymru. Just in case anybody didn't know, that's an interest of mine. But I suppose in terms of working with other regions, it's currently unilateral. I'm probably getting into difficult territory here, but I think there's a limit probably to what the people you want to work with can do if they aren't able to access the same activities. So there's this sort of general, and I know Dafydd and I will chat about this the value of that sort of. I would say this, wouldn't I? But this is coming from you. The value of the seed funding, but that can sometimes be a barrier. We've managed to do it with Brittany, for example, and that has allowed some genuine joint activity and a scale of activity that we wouldn't have been able to support. So there's kind of I personally think there's something in that space, but I'm putting words in your mouth.
No, absolutely. But I also think that it's just a blueprint for what can happen going forward. It's an example of something that worked really successfully in a specific market with specific companies. So what are the next options? We can look at other sectors, we can look at different regions and expand in that. But I think from my I worked in a commercial role previously and then came into this job working as a cluster, and I think I talk about this all the time, but I feel really passionate about it. It really is about understanding and personal relationships. Having an understanding of what other organisations in and around you can do can be beneficial to them, but also beneficial to you, because you can use them as an extended network. And I think that it makes so much sense that with the region that we're talking about specifically here, Irene and I have talked about it with Scotland. It makes sense for us all to be talking about it, and being here and being able to talk to all of you about something that I'm passionate about but is very niche and specific, I think is just important because we can learn from each other. And we've worked with Enterprise Ireland, we're working with the University of Strathclyde. We should be talking more about the things that we're doing and where those successes come from, so that other people can learn and help. There'll be, lots of people in the room that I'm looking forward to talking to now, which will have hopefully some ideas for other things that I can do as well. So continuing a structure that allows to continue those interactions, because as you say, it's not happening otherwise. I think that's I think people can look at an activity like this and accuse it of being just networking, just talking shops, and you're driving value out of it. But the point is, it isn't happening without the leadership, as the Cabinet Secretary touched on, but also without some of these structures, whatever they may be. Yeah, absolutely. And somebody, I think Irene mentioned earlier, getting the sign-off to travel somewhere or to be somewhere in person. It's a day out of the office and you go back and you've got an inbox full of emails. The small project that we undertook absolutely helped to drive economic growth. And so I feel really passionate about talking about that, because hopefully that will help other organisations be able to justify doing it. I remember having to speak to my boss in my previous life saying, please let me go to this exhibition. I know that it will help. But I think us talking about the successes that we have, of which there are many, is just really important.
Great, and in a sense you covered the last question, which is the same as for everyone. But if there was one step that we should take, one thing that perhaps we should put in that action plan, is anything to add to what you already said, really? No, I think for us, we'll continue to work with you, Geraint, and your team. It should be perhaps a more structured growth, but also what other sectors or organisations can learn from the work that we've already done, and how can we share that knowledge. We talk about collaboration and knowledge sharing all the time, but it's events like this that actually help to do that. Yeah. And you can learn so much more just from a conversation over a cup of tea, as opposed to a strategy paper or some emails. Sometimes there's a place for everything, but I think that it's the success lies in the people and relationships that are built, and I think that's really important. I think that's a really good point about having mechanisms and a range of mechanisms, because everybody learns in different ways, and there's different ways. So for some people it is the cup of coffee. Some it's reading a document. For some it's just being told the very simple thing they need for their role, isn't it? So again, there's work to be done, perhaps around that sharing knowledge. Great, thank you. I think we're doing all right actually on time. So Dafydd and I have chatted a while back, and we did go on a bit, didn't we? So apologies in advance, but
starting stopwatches.
But and purposely put Dafydd at the end, because I think again he's I'll let him explain. But where so Dafydd Pugh, project manager of the Straits Committee for Kent County Council, who've already had a shout out already.
Thank you.
And again, we're both trying to get our heads around here, and this is what we'll discuss here around that seeding and the scaling up element, and obviously we've picked up on some of that theme all the way through. But yeah, again, can you say a little bit about yourself and your interest in cooperation in the Irish Sea region?
Yeah, sure, will do. So yeah, start your watches. I'll try not to bore you into lunch. But no, Dafydd, Pugh, I work for Kent County Council. I'm the project manager, as Geraint says, for an initiative called the Straits Committee. And first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to join you today, because it's also personally quite important to me. It's 30 years practically to the day, give or take 1 or 2 days, that I left Cardiff. And at the beginning of December, it's 30 years since I left the UK, or so I thought. So if you had told me 30 years ago, I'd be sitting on the stage in Cardiff talking about Kent County Council and what we do in France. Yeah, that was not in the script. So anyway, you know, if you're interested in cooperation, you know, why on earth wouldn't we in Kent be interested in what you're doing in Ireland is my starting point across the Irish Sea. Because there are just so many parallels between us. You know, we're a maritime border. We are 20 miles away from France, so it's quite narrow. I know across the Scottish, Northern Irish border, it's even more narrow. But you know, we are really, really important trade and travel routes. We irrigate the UK economy. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of jobs that depend on the effectiveness of our cross-channel links. You know, every year there's over 30 million people who cross our border. There's 4 million trucks, over 3 million tourist vehicles, 100,000 coaches. All of them want to go on the first weekend of the summer holiday or the first weekend of Easter. Not helpful, but that's one of the things that we have to manage in Kent. We also have our trading standards. We do the scientific services for when goods come across and need to be tested. We work very closely with the port health authorities around food. So we are heavily embedded in everything to do with the border. We've recognised it's important. So of course we've had long-standing relations with our neighbours across the channel. I mean, when someone had finally the idea that we're going to make a channel tunnel, you know, Kent sat down with its neighbours in northern France and said, look guys, how are we going to make the most of this? Because the border should be a benefit and not a burden. You know, remember, we do all this good stuff for the rest of the country, but it'd be nice to get something back. So we've had formal relations since the late 1980s with our neighbours. And then, of course, you know, we both had the situation where we were going to become an external border. So then again, that prompted a whole load of conversations. I think the first time a French politician was through the door was 2 days after the vote. And you know, over several conversations with French neighbours, Dutch neighbours, Belgian neighbours, it became apparent that everyone thought the cooperation in our area, and you've got to think, if you draw a line around Rotterdam down to Calais, through Kent, up around Harwich, Felixstowe, you know, that is the epicentre of the trade that goes between mainland continental Europe, apart from the stuff that now goes from Rosslare up to Dunkirk, which we watch. So I would claim we are part of the Irish Sea or an extension. You know, but that's where it happens. So everyone was committed to continuing that cooperation. We had support from the British Embassy in Paris. There's also, you know, a summit between France and the UK that said these local links, particularly in the Dover-Calais region, are very important. So a lot of things came together about the same time, and this again is why, you know, I'm so interested in what you've been doing, because it's like we've been having these parallel conversations. You know, why did it take us so long to get together and talk about them? You know, but in 2020 we set up this thing called the Straits Committee, and it's really, really simple. It involves 7 different provincial, departmental, local authorities from the UK, coastal France, Belgium and the Netherlands, so going up to South Holland, which is around Rotterdam, through East and West Flanders, Zeeland in the Netherlands, East and West Flanders in Belgium, Noord and Pas-de-Calais, which are the neighbouring départements. And it's a framework for cooperation. We've got, you know, a simple objective to be the place where the UK and continental Europe meet and thrive. We have a memorandum of understanding. The members got together and said, look, particular priorities around the economy, keeping trade fluid, climate change, supporting young people. But above all, we want to be an open door. You know, anyone can knock on the door and see what we can do to help. And then it's our job to actually see, well, what can we really do to help you? It works very simply. We have elected members that come together 3 times a year. And Irene, you put your finger on it exactly when you spoke about missing links. Because when we sat down with everyone to talk about, okay, what are we really going to do? We'd had long-standing Interreg programs with oodles of money, some great projects, probably some not-so-great ones. We're not going to talk about those ones today. But the missing link was, when times were good, people don't necessarily talk to each other as much as they should. You just let it happen. And then, a challenge comes, and we suddenly realize, actually, elected members, there's nowhere where they're sitting down and talking to each other on a regular basis. So, we hit on, that's the gap. There's an ambition from members on all sides to work together, but with a purpose. We had a launch conference, everyone was telling us, look, can you organise something financially? So then, March 2020, members sat down and said, okay, we've had this launch conference, we need to set up a funding programme, we're going to have like an annual forum. Then, of course, COVID came. And so it could have all fallen apart. But with the team of officers that I work with in the other authorities, we sat down every 2 weeks online. And I think it's something that has continued throughout. And I think that's so important for the cooperation. And it's the thing that actually makes it work. There's this constant connection. And through that, the work gets prioritised. We had the time and space to work out, okay, we've got a little amount of money. Every authority's made a commitment. We're going to put some money on the table. So it's not just a paper commitment. We have to back it up with a small amount of money. And then we designed a funding initiative together. So since the start of 2022, we've funded 16, we call them small projects. And between all our authorities, we've spent about 500 or engaged about 500,000 euros, about 80 different project partners, 65 different organisations that have been involved. And those can be projects on anything. From the start, we said, we want to make it simple as possible. And actually, it's not for us to tell you, it's for you. The objective is for you to come up with projects of tangible benefit. So bring us your ideas, and then we'll see, does that fit in with the funding rules of each authority, which we still have to respect, but we've created a common process and a door you can come through to develop a project. And the other thing is, unlike Interreg perhaps, where you've got thousands of applications and you're in the position where you're rejecting people, it's very much about, okay, if you've got an idea and we think the members will like it, we will work with you to shape that up, and then when it comes to the members, 99.9% of the time, we're pretty certain they're going to say, that's a really good project, get on and fund it. So that's one aspect of what we do. The other part of that is requests that we can pitch to each other, and I think that's something we shouldn't underplay. I mean, in 2022, we had the Port of Dover. Port Dover and Calais are in the middle of a really big project, Dover, Calais, Dunkirk. How do you electrify the ferry system? So remember, you've got the tunnel, fully electrified, but over half the traffic goes through ferries, which are still heavily polluting. And there's a big project. Someone has to design the plug to plug in the nuclear power station at Gravelines. We have to power up the network on our side and get the power into the boats, and hopefully by 2050, everything will be electric. So Dover had a beautiful project ready to go, and then one of the ferry companies laid off all its staff. You probably remember P&O. We do, because then we had it on our roads. But then there was a project, best part of £1 million, ready to go into UKRI and the Department for Transport, and they wouldn't touch it. So we knocked on the door of our French colleagues and said, look, can you sign a letter together to show that actually this isn't about Kent and Dover and P&O. Actually, it's a wider issue. And I think because we had that cooperation with our neighbours, that the politicians are meeting 3 times a year, they know each other, so they're not shy of saying, like, I've got a problem, can you help me out? And if anyone's worked with France, hands up, anyone's worked with France here? Okay, no one's worked with France. Okay, a few very shy hands. You can, it's fun. Sometimes it takes a bit of time, but I think having those connections really helps to speed things up when you need an answer in a hurry, and that letter unblocked that project.
Yeah.
So the other thing we do is, apart from requests for help, is partnering. So every year we try and have an annual theme. After COVID, it was about bringing people together. So we had a big schools hackathon where children from across the Straits came together to develop environmental projects, and we funded the winning project. It's lovely to see like 150 kids together in one room and just feel the energy. I mean, that was great. We've had a Youth Olympics in 2024, but there are other things which perhaps a bit more, it's the core of why this collaboration is important. And 2023 was the 70th anniversary of the Great North Sea Flood. So we're working with partners in the Netherlands, where in 1953, a storm surge caused the loss of over 2,000 lives, which led very much to a feeling of never again. Huge flood defences built in the Netherlands. We had the same in the UK, in Essex, where over 300 people lost their lives. But we're in a geographical area where the challenges of sea level rise, drought and flooding are getting towards existential for the future of our agriculture, the future of our coastal communities. And to be invited to take part for our elected members was very moving. But we built a programme together on that year of actual exchanges. What can we do? What is everyone doing to address these challenges? And it's the ripple effect that then happens. One thing that leads to another leads to another. So we started off with some exchanges. There's been some consultancy that's happened. People have been invited to go on peer reviews. There's a project that's come out of it. And I think that's really, really valuable. So I can go on forever. So just when you've had enough, just
form an orderly queue. I mean, in a sense, you've kind of I'm picking up a couple of points there. I think development of ideas rather than sort of sitting behind, guidance or rules. That's singing my tune, as my team knows. I think that's really important because it's really hard to build relationships, and it takes a lot of effort. And if you're gonna shoot somebody down after they've done all that work, you need to have those early conversations. You need to, shape what it looks like and how it works for you. I think that really the point around the sort of facilitation advocacy almost for that bigger opportunity. You drawing on those relationships, and I know disc partners. We're thinking about I tend to obviously highlight the ability to support capacity for ongoing work, through projects and seed funding. But actually, there's the need, as we've touched on, in terms of frameworks and structures, that regular meeting of people. It's the capacity to do that within governments as well. If we're not doing that, then how can we expect others to do that? So that's an important point. So in a sense, we're learning from you, because my next question, what can we learn from each other? So I think you're already giving us a number of really, really useful points. But anything you want to add in that sort of exchange of ideas?
Okay, well, this is going to be a cross-border love fest, because I think,
I think we've got a good audience for that, but we'll get heckled at some point probably.
I think I was seduced by your presentation last summer on the Irish Sea framework and the sort of continuum. The story you tell is very compelling.
Is it right?
When you read documents, you just go on what's on the paper. So I think the shared statements are really well put together. It's very, very clear. The statement of purpose, why we're doing things, and identifying the themes, priority themes for cooperation, it's really well set out, and it's got political commitments. You can see, so it's believable. But then you've backed it up, and I think, when Brexit was going on, we're busy looking at what everyone else is doing. So we're keeping an eye on all the documents you were writing, and in one of them you started talking about an agile fund. To do, it's like, it's an agile fund. Sounds good, but I want to know more. But you actually did it. So again, that's the other thing. Policy documents, sometimes there are lots of things that are written. It becomes like a dustbin. Everyone's to throw that in. Got a huge long list of things, and actually nothing gets done. So, I believe you when you say, actually, we've got this shared statement, this commitment, these are our priorities, we've got our Agile Fund, and look, we're all here in Cardiff today talking about it. So I think you've got a compelling story to tell. I think, sorry, if you see me looking down, I got so excited, I left all my notes, but my lovely Dutch wife sent them to me, so, so that's what I think we can learn from you, and I'm really keen, if people who've been beneficiaries of Agile funding, I want to talk to you today. So, please come and talk to me. What can we teach you? I don't think we've got anything to teach you, but what people have told us, what I find so surprising. So we did a presentation last December. Our elected members from Kent and Pas-de-Calais went to there's another local government love fest, the UK-France Local Government Forum, held every 2 years. And we got invited to do a presentation, so we thought, how can we make it a bit more interesting? We made it a Christmas quiz. Fortunately, the British ambassador got the first question right, the only person in the room, and there was about this many people. It was about how anyway, no, I won't go into that. Anyway, that was a good start. Where was I going with this? Afterwards, I was sitting in the pub in Leeds with a French civil servant who runs a cross-border cooperation program and saying, I want to give you some money. I say, I've got a program, but I believe in you because, you've got a structure. And what did it for them? So one of our quiz questions was, how often do you meet? And we said, 3 times a year? Is it once a month? Or is it, every other Monday at 2 p.m. Central European time? And so people put up their hands, and a few people went for the last one. And it is that. It's, we've got a team of officers who meet every 2 weeks, systematically, online. And I think it didn't strike me that was unusual, but they were saying, actually, there aren't that many, if you're a project, you meet, but we're not a project, So there is, if there's one lesson I take, is you've got to be systematic. Keep it simple. I think we've done that on both sides. We're not endlessly writing position papers, thank God. So we've got one memorandum of understanding, we've got one vision document, we've got one funding program, and that's about it in terms of paper. The rest of it is when people knock on the door, for goodness sake, make it happen.
Yes.
Because people, there are quite often different doors people can knock on, so make your door the most inviting to walk through.
Yeah, I think that's that's probably the most important point. And you earn trust and respect for it, including saying no, I can't help you. But try and make it happen. Next question then is around sort of next practical step, but again, we've already touched on it here, and we focus probably quite a bit around the structures for seeding and then scaling up. But I mean, another shared interest, you've talked about practical steps, so you can answer that one. So I'll give you 2 here. You can answer what is the next step that we should take, as in this partnership here, this Irish Sea region. If you think we should do something, but also then there's an opportunity as the shared interest that we have around Interreg, and is there anything that we should be doing to encourage conversations around that? So 2 questions there for you. I don't know if they link really, but perhaps they do a little bit.
Yeah, no, what we've learned is it's harder now to initiate large-scale cooperation. I mean, it's great, and I think it's so good to hear the links that are being made in Ireland between, say, the Horizon Europe program, but also territorial aspects. I think that what was good about Interreg, the things that I think we benefited from, apart from the fact we had a fairly narrow geography. A cross-border program is great because it loads the dice in your favour. But we had really good projects about applied research. People really valued the fact, if you compared it with domestic structural funds, people would say you ended up with the same sort of project always because the performance framework was so prescriptive, whereas at least with Interreg you had that space to experiment. You know, and then it locked you into cooperation, to experiment, to tackle a shared challenge over a period of years. So I think what we've done is we've created some of the missing pieces of the puzzle, which were what's that really easy first step towards collaboration. You've got Agile Cymru now, which I think is fabulous. We've got our small project initiative. Horizon is at the other end of the horizon. But if it's 5% success rate, 10% success rate, go for it. That's the ultimate prize. But what's that middle bit? And then how can we advocate for that middle bit, which we've lost? I don't have the answer, but I'm willing to work with you to work out how do we build that best case possible, and what's appropriate for our different, our different borders.
So continuing to work together on our shared interests is the next step we can take.
Yeah, let's just keep just a bit of friendly.
And we all need capacity in order to do that. Otherwise, it melts away into into whatever the day job is, doesn't it? So that's again is a point I think that will come through in DISC. Great. I think we've done that quite nicely, which shocks me. So we now have, it's lunchtime, not yet. You have to stay now. We have 25 minutes, we don't have to use them all, but we will open this up now for questions. If you don't ask a question, then you will get us going on again and again and again. So that's your motivation.
The exits are there.
The exits are there. Yeah. The doors are locked. We have Gareth, who had something to do with that call calendar that was shouted out. So he's feeling very smug at this point in time. We'll rove with the mic. It's always hard to get the first question. Any questions from you for the panel? Any member of the panel? Caroline? Sorry, can you wait for them, or an observation? An observation would be fine as well. Sorry.
Thanks very much. So my name is Caroline Coleman, and I'm from Scottish Enterprise, and I'm also the national contact point for Peace Plus for Scotland. So thank you to all of the panel. It's been very interesting to hear about the collaborations and where we can go from here, and particularly around the DISC project. I think I would like to take Kevin up on his kindness of collaborating for East to West. So I'm part of a strategic funding team, and we're already working with Enterprise Ireland and Invest NI, and I think that's something that the DISC project should look at in terms of our future collaboration, because within the DISC project we also talk about other sources of funding and collaborations. So it's been very interesting to hear all of you, but I'll certainly be in touch, or perhaps my boss Francesca Giannini. So thanks to everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Can I mention something?
Yeah, of course.
Which I forgot to mention earlier, and I only thought of it about 10 seconds ago. So the former UK ambassador to Ireland recently retired, and he has stayed on in Ireland, and he now heads up the Irish Universities Association, which is a representative body for all the top 8 universities in Ireland. So I'm keen to have a discussion with him on the IRC collaboration and so on. It hasn't come up in any of our previous interactions with the IUA, but obviously they're a big multiplier in terms of mobilising universities in Ireland and getting them interested in stuff.
I think that's a really good point.
So he basically said, I decided I couldn't leave Ireland, so I'm staying. And he's now heading up the IUA. So
no, I think that's a really good point.
Useful contact.
And it's a point for everybody in the room, really, that you'll have your own your own networks, your own interests. If you think this is a good idea, cooperating in the IRC region, mention it to people, because people generally, what I find is they may not be aware of it. They may not be aware that we're all here talking about this, because people you don't necessarily, even though you do the PR, you don't necessarily get that out. But usually when you do make them aware, they go, oh, that's a really good idea. I was thinking along the same lines. I mean, Dafydd and I were working away in parallel furrows for a while, and so yeah, that's just raising awareness and saying there's, I think there's something happening here. I think if you feel that at the end of the day, then take that away. Any questions? I've got a hand there at the back. Once we get to 2 questions, I think we feel more relaxed. Yeah. Go on.
Hello, thank you everybody. My name's Gillian Weaver, I'm a specialist in human milk banking. I have to say I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone here, but I feel I'm amongst friends, at least with Dafydd, because I live in Dover. So if you have any sympathy for people stuck in those great long queues, please have sympathy for me too. But my question is actually for Madeleine, because I have an interest in moving breast milk around Wales, Ireland, anywhere else. And I'm wondering if there's any cooperation with regard to the development of drones and drone services for moving not just breast milk, but lots of other products within tissues, blood, whatever. So hopefully that's something that I can learn about.
Drones is actually one of the next sectors that we've been talking to Ireland about, because Ireland have a very advanced drone industry.
Future Mobility Campus Ireland is a great test bed for drone.
Which we visited when we came over to with the Agile funding, which yes, Wales does have a lot of drone companies, and I can pick up with you afterwards. Yeah, it's one of the sectors, but it's one of the areas that we're looking to Ireland again, because they are much further advanced than we are, and the conversations have already started with that.
Yeah, there's an Irish company called Mana Aero who've been developing drone delivery systems, and they've been prototyping and testing that in Dublin and Galway and so on. So initially they're delivering fast food to certain regions in Dublin and so on. So they've been developing and prototyping that as well. And the Irish Aviation Authority is quite forward thinking in terms of allowing test beds and kind of prototyping and trialing different types of drone delivery innovations and services and so on. So yeah, we have some activity in that area.
Okay, thank you. Because the biggest problem getting milk around Wales is the transport network at the moment, and those big hills. So that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And if you haven't worked out, you'll be able to hear from Gillian in the workshop on life sciences as well. So a nice plug there for Zoe. Any other questions? Yeah, thank you. It's good now. I'm feeling good now. We've got 3.
Relax, Geraint.
Yeah, hi there. It's James Cushing from the Connected Places Catapult. Great to hear from all the panel, particularly about the importance of collaboration. Hello, yeah. Importance of collaboration, but also I sensed some concerns or sort of an underlying theme of it's perhaps becoming a little harder to do that between places. So I suppose the question for all the panel members was, how do we make that collaboration? But how do we find space or opportunities to do that? What's the practical tips?
Who wants to pick that one up? I mean, I think hopefully we've touched on that through the conversations, and there'll be my task for the workshops, as they know, is to drive down through the 5 questions that we've set you actually, and you'll be answering through the Mentimeter to get down to practical next steps and projects within those particular themes and the sub-themes within it. So we'll be throwing that question back at yourselves. But yeah, I mean, any observations from the panel?
For us, getting companies involved has been it's been a lot easier after we've been able to talk about successful projects. So I mentioned the strategic working group, which was the MRO hub. That's taken 5 years, and the first 2 years were tricky. But we talk about that at every opportunity, and we use it as a promotional tool when we're going out to different exhibitions internationally, or when we're talking to Welsh Government, UK Government. And so now people, or our cluster, there's organisations that are asking to join because they understand. So I think it's the communication of what you're doing and making sure that those positive news stories are talked about, because often I think I mentioned this earlier, your head down, everybody's doing their day job. These bits are often seen as nice to haves, or you'll find a space for it if we understand that, you know, for us, it is actually driving economic growth, and those businesses are growing because of the connections that they have. It moves up the priority list, and other companies will then think, oh, I should perhaps be part of that.
Sorry, go on.
Go after you.
Cool competition. No, I think I'll be using your example to death, actually. So that will be disseminated so widely, particularly because it's got the business link, because often they're so hard to... And with Interreg programs in the past, they were a difficult nut to crack. But again, just because time, resources, capacity, and Interreg had this reputation for being awful complicated. And so hearing about how particularly the momentum's grown is really interesting. And also, I think that sort of grassroots kind of demonstrate what works, and having sort of examples that you can relay to people is really important. But also, somewhere along the line, you don't want to build cooperation on negative things, but making it clear what the costs of inaction are is quite important, because there are now so many huge pressures, challenges and things, like you mentioned, the sort of coastal flooding and sea level rise and all these things that communities, local authorities, regions, countries can't actually address effectively working on their own. And it's always seen as a big problem that maybe somebody further up the line should be doing something about. But again, cooperation is that sort of key tool to sort of beginning to chip away at addressing these problems. And yeah, there's so many barriers, and the number of times I've spoken to, you know, officials and things about, you know, territorial cooperation, good thing, and they're like, yeah, don't have the bandwidth for it now because there's so many competing pressures, budgetary pressures and things. But then when you start, as you say, making a kind of economic argument for it, and sometimes it's not always based on a positive example, it's if you don't do something about this, it's going to cost you a fortune later.
It's the efficiencies point as well, isn't it? Actually, you can do your busy day job much easier. You know, actually, if you just spent an hour talking to somebody or getting together, you know, on a 6-weekly basis.
And a lot
it's not about getting involved in a big complicated project.
And a lot of these projects you see coming through now through various streams of cooperation, it's about looking at new ways to provide public services more efficiently and effectively through using new technologies, which a local authority or a regional authority couldn't test, trial, pilot, advance themselves, but through cooperation they're able to risk share, link up with universities working on that issue, link up with end users and make those kind of connections. So there's a lot of sort of savings which don't necessarily show up in terms of, you know, an arrow going upwards in a chart, but there's a lot of, you'd kind of, need to kind of broaden the scope of, in terms of measuring what cooperation can do. It's sometimes about maintaining things on a level, or sometimes about sort of, you know, savings and things, rather than always bringing in
the outcomes from what you're already doing. There's also, in my sort of, wasn't an answer as such, but again, you know, we can't do this alone, so that there'll be other activities that can align with what we're trying to do here. We're not in the business of you know, dominating the space. In fact, if you read the Irish Sea framework, you say it's all about, you know, I hesitate to use this phrase now because of the Ukraine element, but it's a coalition of the willing. You know, we just want to try and get people together and do more of this. And you know, Cabinet, you know, the Secretary made it very clear that does need some commitment in terms of capacity, you know, resources, capacity, you know, funding. But it's not about having, or they're the answer to everything. So that there'll be things catapult to thinking about that rather than us all going off and doing things separately, we should just align ourselves a little bit, and so that's the call as well, I think. Go on.
Okay. I mean, when I think about trying to do kind of create a bit more of a step change in collaboration. So the European Universities Alliances, now the UK is still in negotiation on association into the Erasmus Plus program and so on, but those European University Alliances are very useful in trying to kind of create much more expansive kind of collaboration at a university level. The unit of collaboration is the university with another university and several others, and I think every university in Ireland is in at least one European University Alliance. So they're using that. Initially it was to develop kind of shared degrees, and it was kind of an education kind of thing and a mobility thing. But as those university alliances mature, they're transmorphing into research and innovation collaboration. So you're now getting universities looking at each other in terms of their relative strengths, priorities, and so on, and adding in kind of smart specialization and a number of other things. And now then that's going to create several layers of potential collaboration between a whole bunch of different parts of that university and so on. I think the opportunity in this context maybe is, so we've got Irish universities that are in those networks already. They're trying to expand them into R&I type things. There's a potential, if you're collaborating and in discussions with those Irish universities, to leverage some of the existing alliance formation that's already happening. There's also bilaterals, like we see some universities in Ireland have signed bilaterals with universities in the UK and elsewhere. I think UCD has a bilateral with Edinburgh University, but those bilaterals are sometimes quite good if they're implemented, and it's more than just a kind of an MOU, because you're setting up a collaboration with a lot of different layers to it, and the multiplier effect from that is much higher. So I think those kind of things amp up, the level of collaboration possible and the opportunities for interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, etc. That's what the Commission is looking for in all of the projects it's funding now. It really does want to see a true marriage, an equal status in terms of the contributors into the project from all disciplines, social sciences, humanities and arts, and STEM and so on. And you don't get that if you stay in your lane, so those university to university alliances can be very good in terms of getting a lot of multiplier effect from them, and I think they work quite well. Like I said earlier, I really like the NTNU example from Norway. It's on their website. If you go and look at the brochures that they've developed, the internal mapping and analysis exercise they conducted that led to those brochures is really good. It's a really proper SWOT analysis of a university in terms of what it's doing, how it wants to collaborate and where its strengths are. And I think if more universities would undertake that kind of psychoanalysis or whatever, it would make partnering, I think, a lot easier. I think it would take some of the friction out of the earlier dating aspects with other universities.
Yeah, I'm just going to add, partnerships are really important, so work with us and how we can support you, but existing programs, making sure that funding programs are open to cooperation. Yeah, and that could be, you have a project on the UK side, but there's an added value of bringing a partner alongside with their own resources from another country. It doesn't take that much in the funding rules to open up opportunities for cooperation, and that's exactly how the Straits Committee funding works. It's not a central pot. It's about aligning everyone's different pots of funding.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Any more? Oh, yeah. Ian? You can't ask me a difficult question now. I won't talk to you.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, thanks everyone. My name is Ian Quick and I'm the Welsh Government representative in Ireland, based in Dublin. Thanks to all the panel members. I found that really interesting, and I think the collaboration is the key element, and the projects that are going on, the connections that have maintained since maybe funding programs have stopped, have been really a testament to the strength of the relationship. A couple of observations, I think, from Madeleine. I was pleased to work alongside her with the aerospace work. And I would just reiterate, for a very small amount of money, the impacts are going to be realised in months, years going forward. And not just in Ireland and Wales, but actually now they're meeting and collaborating in shows in Asia, North America. So it's outside of even the region, those connections that have been built that will be realised in years to come. It was interesting to hear about the kind of the Dover position. Some of us have still got the scars from the closure of Holyhead at the end of last year, and significantly that is the second largest trade route kind of island into the UK. So when that suffered that challenge, that really shone a light on the importance of the trade routes and the economic value. Mentioned about the Connected Catapult. We're going to be in Limerick later this month with some of the cities. So Cardiff will be over there, some of the Scottish cities as well. So the Joining the Dots campaign that is led by the British Embassy in Dublin, that is kind of leading to more work there. But finally, excuse me, the final question really was around energy and renewable energy and the potential literally in the Irish Celtic Sea going forward. So I'm just wondering how, as a possible tangible outcome from today as well, could we look at how the ports, the developers, the skills that are needed, the research that's already going on between universities, in Ireland, the consenting licensing body MARA already speaking to Wales. So I think there's a lot that can be, there's a lot happening in that sector, but there's a lot more that we could maybe collaborate and work together on. Thanks.
Any observations on that one? No, other than I mentioned that we've funded 9 technology centres through our Technology Centres programme, and that there's a plan to look at a renewable energy technology centre, which will then hopefully act as a locus for clustering of renewable energy companies in Ireland around an industry-led research agenda. And that could be a nice multiplier then, though that centre will also have internationalisation KPIs around collaboration in Horizon Europe and so on. So it's not, it doesn't exist yet, but plans are it will exist in the next year or two.
I think there's, I'll bring a question in now. I think my thought on that, I've had conversations where people are making the assumption there's already a lot going on in that marine energy space, but actually there's so much that needs to be done in that, and the workshop this afternoon will sort of reflect the sort of breadth of the interlinkage in that area. So even it's bringing some of those large scale investments. The ports one rings a very, very strong bell, because of that we're having similar conversations with Atlantic regions and transatlantic regions about that shared use of ports. How you do that, but the best starting point is to communicate. So there's so much work that needs to be done in that, and it's everybody's top priority. So I think it would be strange if this wasn't taking that into account. But it's interesting, because sometimes that is challenged on the basis of, well, there's this and there's that. Well, yes, that's because there's so much to do, I think is the point. But Sheila, I'm sure, will cover that in her workshop. So, sorry, yes, yeah. Is that Margaret, is that you?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm Margaret Llewellyn. My whole career has been in ports and shipping, having stevedored all the container terminals in Belfast, and also built one in Swansea, and run an Irish Sea service. To touch on your point, I'd be happy to sit down with you and talk to you about all the different opportunities of sustainable fuel that we're looking at, which I'm working with Geraint on. But there's a lot to be done, but also there's a lot that's already being done. I think we have issues about floating offshore wind. Having been a ship owner operating in the Irish Sea in the middle of winter, I know that people understand that it is quite a difficult area to be in if you've got floating offshore wind. Fixed wind is a different matter. But I'd be happy to go through it all, because obviously I'm very close to the Irish ports, and I'm close to the Welsh ports, and I'm close to the Scottish ports. So I do have a depth of knowledge that I can give to you.
That's great. Thanks, Margaret. And I think you're going to the Sustainable Blue Growth Workshop as well. So there's those conversations there. Right. I better start winding it up. So I think unless anybody's got an absolute burning question.
There's a lady
Oh, sorry. I've got mine. Gwenllian.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting talks this morning. I'm Gwenllian Owen. I'm from MSparc, the Menai Science Park on Anglesey in North Wales. I'm just picking up on what you were saying, Kevin, about the technology centres that you're looking at opening up now. We work on a variety of different projects at MSparc, but a lot of them are concerned with renewable energy and different energy types, and run a number of clusters from MSparc. I think it'd be really beneficial to talk to you about the work that you're looking at doing in Dublin as well.
Yeah, because I mean, although I mentioned there would be a specific tech centre in renewable energy, we already have existing tech centres that are kind of horizontally going into renewable energy, like using AI in renewable energy and so on, the digitization. And so we have some existing activities that kind of are going in horizontally into that. And we have a number of technology gateways that are focused on renewable energy. Yeah, one in Dundalk IT, which is kind of, northeast. So yeah, there's plenty going on already, that would be worth talking about.
Okay, we'll try and pick that up with you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll draw it there. The conversations are definitely going to continue. So I think I've mentioned most of that. I'm thinking I probably haven't mentioned Reese's communities and culture, but I think Kevin did a very good job earlier on about showing all the relevance of the themes that we're going to be talking about this afternoon. So I think my notes are up to date. There's always these last minute changes that so that if the team shout if I'm saying anything wrong. So good news is that you don't have to put up with us anymore. We'll bring that to a close. As you can probably tell, I found it absolutely fascinating. So apologies if we got carried away, but I think that was really useful. And thank you very much to the panel. That worked better than I imagined, which is always good.
Oh, thank you, Geraint. Always first with the compliments.
That was made at me more than yourselves. But no, I think it was absolutely fascinating and really good to build on. So you now have so we've to continue the point about connections, communications, having the coffee. That's why we've got an hour and a half now for lunch, and we do, because I've just about managed to bring it in on time. And as you've already seen, there are stands, essentially. We didn't want to call them stands because they're going to be smaller, but showcases, stands. Hopefully we've already spoken to some. Gwenllian will be occupying one. And so that's a point for your networking once you've got. The food, I think, is kind of to the left, but it's buffet, so you can go back to that networking space. Afterwards then, as you got on the agenda, it's 1:30 for the workshop, so please head up a bit earlier, because there's nothing worse than you start your spiel and people are banging the door as they're coming in. The communities and cultures one is upstairs, so I think it's just a case of finding the lift, which is just there, and you'll be guided. There'll be people there pointing you in the right direction, and the room is the Llandaff suite. This room will be split, so you can't use this room. So if you want to access your stuff, it might be. Do we need to take it out? Do you think? No, we're okay, are we? But this room is literally going to be split down the middle. So bear that in mind if you're thinking. And that will then turn into two rooms: the castle room and the friary suite. So basically, it's this room split in half. And the castle room is where the Sustainable Blue Growth workshop will happen, and the life sciences one will happen in the friary suite. I think we're relatively relaxed because the numbers are pretty good across all. So if you are thinking, actually, I want to go to that one, you will upset the workshop lead if you do that, but they don't necessarily know who you are at the moment, so you can probably get away with it. We might tell you off later on, perhaps, but no. I mean, I think generally we're quite relaxed. If that's where you think the magic is going to happen, then go to that. I'm going to try and get around all three as well, because as we've already touched on, they're very interlinked. Cultures and communities brings us together. It generates economic benefits in terms of sustainable growth and use of language and youth. You know, these are all positive things that bring us together, and that helps pull us together in the area of sustainable blue growth and the shared interests around life sciences and health. There's a reason why these have emerged as the priorities. We can discuss other priorities, absolutely. I was having a conversation yesterday about the links between agriculture and potentially, obviously the innovation space, but also in the communities and culture space, because they're looking at it from a very bottom-up point of view. And Derek is in conversation at the moment, but he's one of the showcases out there. So if you want to have a conversation around that, so yeah, we're very open. And that's it. I think there will be signs on doors, but you don't have any dots on your labels. That was a plan, but we're not doing that. So hopefully you'll be able to find that there'll be people to help you. And I think the only thing is badges, isn't it? At some point, if you can, obviously after the event, but on your way out, don't chuck it in the bin. Can you leave it? There'll be a desk or something. I'll leave it in a general facility, and we can recycle those. They've already been used once. That's it, I think. He says, looking at the boss, Lucy, at the back, and she's giving me the nod. So, okay, thank you very much. I hope my mic will now go off, so that I can swear, and thank you very much.